Hello everyone, welcome back to YK Reviews. I know I'm a bit late to the party, but this is going to be all about Scream 6, the latest movie in the Scream franchise, so let's get into it. Now again, apologies that this video is coming out late. Scream 6 has been out for a couple of weeks here. This is going to be like an in-depth spoiler review. I've done the reviews for all of the Scream movies 1 to 5. So with this latest line of Ghostface coming out, haunting everybody now in New York, similar to Jason Takes Manhattan in the Friday the 13th franchise, this is Ghostface taking on Manhattan. And I'm going to say this right now, a much better version. I loved the New York settings. I loved Ghostface in this movie. Has so many positives and also some negatives through the movie here. But let's get started with one of my favorite parts of the Scream movies is the opening sequences here. Now with this opening sequences, you've got a professor from the university. She's played by Samara Weaver, and she's basically in a restaurant going on a blind date. She gets a phone call where she suspects that this is from her date. Basically is lost, asking for directions. They have this back and forth conversation here. Basically, he leads her into the outside where she's confirming like the street address, the restaurant color. She ends up going into this dark alleyway where Ghostface ends up killing her. The kill itself wasn't that great, but I just love the way they was like stabbing Samara Weaver there. Then something that really caught me off guard is when Ghostface just unmasked himself, and you think that did they just reveal Ghostface right there and then? So you've got Ghostface, who basically turns out to be one of her students at the university, and it's Jason, who is played by Tony Revolori, and I'm so bad with names, so I apologize if I mispronounced the name here. So he is one of her students, so he ends up killing her, and so you get this like POV shot of him just walking around the streets. He actually goes past one of our characters, Tara, in this university campus. You see him walking around like normal. He goes back to his apartment, and you just get this like really fascinating shot. Normally opening sequences, you get the first kill and that's the end of it, but then there's no title sequences, there's no nothing like that. You have this unique perspective of him going around, walking from the killing all the way back to his apartment, and that's where he gets a phone call from what he suspects to be his roommate, Greg, where we come to find out that these two are working together because basically they are trying to complete Richie's movie, Richie from the Scream 5 movie, so they're trying to complete his movie project basically, and that's the reason why they're going out and killing. And what I really liked as well is that you have like this conversation, you have the real Ghostface, the Ghostface that's going to be in this movie, having this conversation with Jason, asking him what it feels like to kill, him just describing that feeling, calling Samara Weaver as just like basically an animal, and that it's just like the description he gives was just so messed up. And as the conversation is continuing, he opens up his fridge to find out that Greg has actually been chopped up into not a million pieces, but he's just been chopped up, and his just body's parts has been left in the fridge. And that's when the real Ghostface comes in and just kills Jason off, and that's your opening sequence, which I thoroughly enjoyed with that. Such a different perspective, such a different take with this opening sequence. So hands down, a brilliant opening sequence to the Scream movie here. And so we go back to tradition where we basically find out what the characters have been up to. Instead of going for the legacy characters like Sydney or Gail or Dewey, we go to our characters from Scream 5 who we're now attached to. So we come to find out that Sam, after the events of the previous movie, this is taking place 1 year after Scream 5, so she's currently in therapy, and I really enjoyed this sequence where she's basically describing what happened and how she killed Richie, but like she's not describing it in a traumatic way. The way she's talking about it is how she enjoyed doing it, basically taking off after her father, Billy Loomis, and just the reaction of this therapist to just freaking out and like thinking that he's in over his head and that he basically can't help her. And so she basically ends up leaving. We come to see this party going on where we see our other characters. You've got Tara, you've got Mindy, you've got Chad. We see another new character that we get introduced to, Anika, who is basically Mindy's girlfriend. And we also see how Tara's coping. She's basically forgotten about everything from Scream 5. Is about to be taken advantage by some douchebag guy, only for like Chad to get involved. And Sam comes in, ends up tasering him in his little special area here. And then that's where you have this confrontation between Sam and Tara, how basically the words that were spoken, how Sam has basically just followed Tara. She's working two dead-end jobs, not really having a career, not really pursuing anything, while Tara is trying to be out here living her life, trying to get a degree, trying to like get a good job eventually. So, and then we also come to see as well, like you have, because of the events of Scream 5, you've got these conspiracy theories. You have people going on about how Sam is the one behind everything that happened in Scream 5, how she murdered Richie, her boyfriend. She's really Ghostface. So you've got people throwing drinks at her. You've got people accusing her of being the killer. So you basically just see like everything going downhill for Sam, essentially, with everything that's going on in her life right now. And so as everybody gets back to like Sam's apartment, so that's where we get introduced to like the characters. So you've got the returning characters of Sam, Tara, Mindy and Chad, as they mentioned, the core four. And then we also get introduced to the new characters. So you've got Danny as Sam's love interest, Anika as Mindy's love interest, you've got Sam's roommate Quinn, and then you've got Chad's roommate Ethan. And that's when we get Sam getting the phone call. So we get introduced to Detective Bailey, who's actually Quinn's father. He basically calls Sam, mentioning that her ID, the Ghostface mask from the previous movie, Scream 5, was left at the scene where Jason got murdered and his roommate Greg got murdered. So she's basically sort of like a suspect since the ID was left at the scene there. So they want to bring her down to the station for questioning. And that's when we get one of like my favorite scenes, because in terms of Ghostface in this movie, I loved what they did with Ghostface. They were describing it as him going to be like the most goriest, the most dangerous Ghostface, and they really did that when it comes to like this sequence here. So Sam gets a call from like Richie's phone, and basically that's when Ghostface comes to attack them in the streets. This is like nighttime here in New York. They end up going into like this bodega, I believe it's called, where Sam and Tara are basically telling people that somebody's after them, Ghostface is after them. That's when Ghostface enters the store, stabs multiple people here, gets a shotgun from like the store owner. And like I know there was a lot of issues with like Ghostface having a shotgun, like these slasher villains using a shotgun, using a gun, but I thought this was used so well, like in the trailers and in like the little clips that they released before the movie got released. It didn't look as natural. It looked very weird, especially when Ghostface dodged the bullet that the shotgun used. But here it just looked very natural. It looked very intense. The sequences that comes after this, after Ghostface kills a shop owner, kills a couple of people there, just having him stalk Sam and Tara in that bodega store there, slowly walking around, just trying to like shoot them, and just everything about this sequence, just having Ghostface use a shotgun. Obviously it's just for that one particular scene, but I thoroughly enjoyed that. I thoroughly enjoyed the suspense of this scene too. And they end up pushing one of the shelves on him, ending up running out the store. Ghostface ends up leaving from the back of the store, and he leaves the mask from 2011 Scream 4's movie there. So there's sort of a pattern developing. Every single crime scene, a mask from the franchise is being left behind there. So they end up going to the station, and that's when we get introduced to another legacy character, Kirby. So again, we come to find out that Kirby is alive from Scream 4. She's now working for the FBI, we come to find out here. And so they've got like this little board of everything, all the victims, all the ghost faces from the past. And so after leaving the station, then we get another legacy character here. So we've got Gail Weathers coming back. And in terms of Gail's character, to be honest with you, I feel like she wasn't utilized or used as much over the course of the movie. There's pretty much only one major scene that she's in, and that we'll get to eventually here. But once she gets introduced into the movie, we come to find out that she's actually written a book about this, even though in the previous movie she was going to write a book about Dewey. So typically Sam goes swinging, basically what Cindy does, tries to punch her, but Gail's smart enough to dodge it, only for her to meet a fist of terror, Jenna Ortega's character, and Tara ends up punching her in the face. We also get an explanation of Sydney Prescott's appearance, disappearance, reason why she's not in the movie, because behind the scene drama in terms of like pay and all that kind of stuff taking place was to the reason why she isn't in the movie. However, the explanation in the movie in terms of why she's not there is that her and her husband Mark have taken their kids to a safe place. Obviously makes a lot of sense. I think that explanation is good. Obviously, why would she go to confront Ghostface? She's got no connection with Sam and Tara in terms of like friendship, relationship, family ties, when she's got kids, when she's got a husband and a family to think of. So I like that explanation there. I'm hoping that she does appear in Scream 7, because the way they're building up this movie, the way that the box offices have been doing, breaking records with Scream 6, there does look like there will be a Scream 7 coming out pretty soon. And I hope that they do resolve the issues behind the scenes where she does appear, because you can't have multiple movies without Sidney Prescott. Like, she is Scream in itself. So hopefully they close up her chapter in a good way in Scream 7. But yeah, she's basically with her family. She's no longer going to be appearing in the movie. And Gail basically gets punched in the face by Tara. And the next murder and the next sequences here is we see the therapist that Sam was talking to earlier on throughout the beginning of the movie here. He ends up getting stabbed in the face by Ghostface, and once again just this terrifying presence of Ghostface, like that little shadow that appears in the glass door, ends up stabbing him, takes a file from the drawer, and then also ends up leaving another mask. This time it's from Scream 3. He ends up leaving that mask in the scene there. And then we come to basically find out now that like this is the scene with the rules of the movie. And I'll be honest with you, in terms of like this one, this isn't my favorite part of the movie, because you've got Mindy, which I really love her character, but I just feel like in this one, part of the Scream movie, when it comes to like who done it, or trying to get the suspicion, or trying to figure out, oh, it's this character or this character, you get these little hints throughout the movie that you figure out by yourself. I felt like in this movie, it was sort of pointed out to you a lot. So you have got like Mindy explaining the rules of the movie, how nobody's safe, how it's become a franchise now. However, pointing to like these new characters, it's going to be you, or it could be you, or it could be you, or just going through like all these like little nods or hints or like things that you can pick up yourself throughout the movie. It's being thrown at you by these characters, so it's being fed to you by a silver spoon rather than you wanting to work it out or wanting to think about it. Because for example, when it comes to like the Scream or the original Scream movie, you have situations where like, for example, they show the boots of Ghostface, and then a couple of scenes later they show the boots of like a police officer or another character, so you kind of like think, oh, could it be this character or this character? But with this, you don't get that at all. When it comes to the movie, you just get characters throwing the lines at you, giving you the information rather than you having your doubts or thinking about it, which sort of bugged me in this movie. And so then we get to the next sequences here. We get to like one of my favorite sequences, to be honest with you. They're all back in the apartment. I really like the interaction, because when it comes to like Chad's character too, I'm going to speak about his character later on, and especially in the third act, but I loved what they did with Chad. Like, he really developed as a character in this movie, and you get him and Tara starting to develop this relationship with one another. They come to find out that they have named their group as the Core 4. You've got the new characters there, and then that's when we come to find out, where you see Danny in the other apartment, seeing that Ghostface has arrived and trying to warn them. Then you have that sequence, and this is what I really liked about the New York settings, because you won't get this in like Woodsboro in terms of like the buildings or like the scenery, the settings that you have there. You've got Ghostface coming in. He ends up attacking the characters there. So you've got Tara and Chad escaping through the front door. You've got the other characters having to use a ladder to escape from like one building to another building. Just that suspense in that sequence. And this is what I mean when it comes to Ghostface, is that they really amped up and really made a great effort with Ghostface as a character and the presence that he had. And even this, just every sequences when it comes to Ghostface attacking, the suspense, the build up in the sequences there, when you've got like the ladder across and you've got everybody trying to climb across the ladder, you've got Sam going across, you've got Mindy going across, and then when it comes to like Anika's character too, she's going across only for Ghostface to take advantage, flip the ladder, her falling down, hitting her head on the dumpster, and just looking at that scene, just looking at Ghostface and like his reaction to, just brilliant writing and brilliant directing when it comes to that. I thoroughly enjoyed like this sequence. You've got like the bodega scene, you've got this scene, like Ghostface really has that fearful presence, which I thoroughly enjoyed. And so we come to find out that Anika's been killed, Quinn's been killed, Detective Bailey's on the scene. He's been taken off the case due to like the connection he has there with like his daughter being murdered, but he still insists on wanting to help like the crew with like solving the case here. And that's when we come to see where Gail has basically found this shrine of all of previous Ghostface, and I loved all of like the Easter eggs that they had there. You've got like the TV that fell on Stu. We see that cross that Derek was tied to in Scream 2. You've got Randy's jumper. You've got Billy's t-shirt, the bloody t-shirt there. You've got this shrine of all the Ghostface, so like the outfits and the masks there. You've got drawings of everything that happened in like the previous movies. There's just so many great Easter eggs and connections that you can see there. I'm sure I missed so many, but these are just off the top of my head that I remember. But I just really love that scene, just seeing like everybody's reaction, like everybody suffered from Ghostface. You've got Kirby, you've got the core four, you just see everybody's like reaction, Gail's reaction to just seeing everything that they had experienced in their life with Ghostface just all around them. So I really liked all of that shrine, all the Easter eggs and everything that they've thrown in there. So what they decide to do essentially is with Kirby, since she's with the FBI, they decide to try and spring a trap on the Ghostface rather than having him out in public. Hopefully he calls them while they're out in public to then be able to like pinpoint his location to capture him. So they're in the park, like you've got Sam and Tara walking around in the park, you've got Detective Bailey sitting on a bench, you've got Kirby inside a van trying to see if they can figure out where Ghostface is. Ghostface ends up calling Sam, and that's where we come to find out. And another brilliant sequence here, we come to find out that Ghostface is actually in Gail's apartment, and we also see this in the trailer too, like Ghostface ends up killing her boyfriend, just having this chase sequences going around him, making fun of Dewey and going back and forth, that suspense that you feel there, especially when she like shooting at the door thinking that she got him. And then you have that sequence where Ghostface ends up like stabbing her. I'm going to talk about this more in towards the third act there, but when you see that a character's being stabbed here, like I feel like they copped out a little bit in terms of like death scenes in this particular movie, like I mentioned, talk about it in the third act. But the sequences here, he ends up stabbing Gail, but Sam and Tara arrive just in time with the paramedics, so they end up saving Gail just in time, so she's not dead. However, this has really taken a toll on the group, so what they want to do is that they want to just like almost give up, only to then just try to rally and try to like get Ghostface once and for all, try to trap him. So they end up taking the subway or the train in New York, and again, this was shown in the trailer, but I just loved all the horror Easter eggs that they had there. You've got people dressed up as Freddy Krueger, Michael Myers, Jason, so many other Easter eggs, so many like shout outs and nods. You had Hellraiser Easter eggs because it is Halloween. Even though they didn't really explore the Halloween settings in New York, I really liked what they did with the sequence, and just even again the suspense in the sequence too. Mindy and Ethan, who was Chad's roommate, end up splitting up from the group, so they're in a separate train there, and you have that sequence of like a lot of people dressed up as Ghostface, at times them looking at Mindy, looking at Ethan, even in the sequences with Sam, Tara, Chad and Danny too, where Ghostface just ends up staring at them. And then we get another sequence here with Ghostface stabbing Mindy eventually, and basically nobody's batting an eye, she's just stabbed there, but we come to also find out that she survives in this. With her, I feel like it is more believable because it was a stab to like the stomach. Paramedics were on the scene quickly, she could survive. That is more believable, but I'll bring up more in terms of like the next sequences here, because we've got the third act now. So you've got Chad, Sam and Tara going into like this abandoned cinema, the gallery with all the Ghostface like memorabilia there. So Sam goes to Billy Loomis's shrine basically. You have another sequence where you've got Billy Loomis's face appearing, him basically confirming not to trust anybody there. With this sequence, I prefer this more than the one in Scream 5 where it's like dream sequence and just seeing his face everywhere. I prefer when it had this type of sequence where you've got Billy's face just showing up, him trying to protect Sam. She ends up taking his knife, and they end up getting trapped, where you've got one of my biggest gripes in this movie. So as I mentioned, Chad and Tara are starting to become a thing. They have like this cute little moment there, only for like Ghostface to appear, and I love that back and forth between Ghostface and Chad basically trying to get one up on them, like that little fight sequences there, only for a second Ghostface to appear. And this, where you just see the two of them just stabbing Chad multiple times, again copping out of his death. Why? Because at the end of the movie he ends up surviving, but that realism into the movie would not have happened. He would have been dead with all that stab wound there. I like Chad as a character. I didn't want him to die. Similar with Gail, similar with Mindy, but if you're going to bring in these characters, or if you're going to introduce new characters, at least make the deaths stick, rather than like turning into basically no suspense in the movie, because you know that they're not going to die essentially at the movie. So that was really frustrating to watch there, when you see Chad getting stabbed multiple times, the heartbreak of Tara's face, only to find out that he did survive in the end of the movie there. And it's similar when it comes to like Kirby too, because in the next sequences here, you've got Detective Bailey arriving at the scene. He's trying to pass the blame onto Kirby, so you've got Sam and Tara in the middle, Kirby and the detective on either side. The detective trying to basically blame Kirby, Kirby's trying to blame him, where the detective ends up shooting Kirby again. For the amount of time that this whole third act sequence took place as well, Kirby's just laying on the floor, she's shot. Realistically, she wouldn't have survived that. Plus, there are other more damages to her as well, other than the shot wound. We come to find out that basically there's 3 Ghostfaces now. So you've got Detective Bailey, you've got Ethan, and then we come to find out that Quinn, who is actually alive, is Ghostface. So you've got these 3 Ghostfaces being revealed here, and we come to find out that their motive is essentially they are Richie's family. So Richie was the oldest son, and he was a huge fanatic. So Detective Bailey was the one that pushed these stab movies. He's the one that helped with this memorabilia. Richie was such a fanatic with everything here, which honestly bumps up Richie up in my eyes. Like, I really like Richie as Ghostface now after everything that we've seen in Scream 6. But I just, this motive very similar to like Scream 2 when it comes to like motive and Ghostface and like the reveal and everything like that. So it was a bit lackluster for me and just disappointing, especially with everything that was happening with this movie, with the Ghostface killings, the sequences, the suspension, everything that was being built up, just for it to all just sort of just kind of like screech at a standstill with this reveal here. So we get the reveal, we get the motives, this chase sequences ensues. Ethan and Quinn are going after Sam and Tara. So you've got the sequences where Sam is holding on to Tara as Ethan is waving the knife at her foot, only for Sam to pass the knife to Tara. Tara ends up landing on Ethan and then stabbing him in the mouth in a most brutal fashion. And then you've got Sam ending up shooting Quinn right in the head, right in front of Detective Bailey. And so another chase sequences ensues. You've got Sam dressed up as Ghostface now, tricking Detective Bailey to then end up stabbing him multiple times, similar to how she killed Richie. She ends up killing the Detective Bailey, so the family is essentially dead. And again, that's when you see the surviving cast. So you've got Mindy surviving, Chad surviving, Kirby surviving. Things that just, I feel like they copped out a lot when it comes to that. So the whole third act just kind of left me a bit disappointed with everything that did take place. Chad, which once again, I love the character of Chad. I didn't want him to die, but I just felt like they copped out of that. Kirby, again, a character I did not want to die. They copped out of that. And then the reveal and the motives and everything with the family in the third act just sort of like brought it down for me a bit here. So as much as I loved everything in Scream 6, the third act sort of just left me a little bit disappointed, left me wanting more, because then again, you've got that final burst of energy from the killer here. You've got Ethan running in, only for Kirby to end up pushing the TV that killed Stu to land on his head, end up killing him too. So the whole family is basically dead, and then that final shot of Sam holding Ghostface's masks to then just ending up throwing it on the floor and walking away with Tara, closing out the movie there. So overall, a really fun, enjoyable movie. I really loved what they did with Ghostface. I really loved the New York settings. I had a really good time with this movie. I can be on board with the whole copping out and having them survive, just as long as they're not doing that in the next movie. If there is a Scream 7 where like you just don't feel the suspense because you know that they're going to survive. But again, in terms of like the motives and the reveal and everything like that, even like Detective Bailey's answer to how like Quinn actually survived, switching out the bodies, using prosthetics, just does not sound believable whatsoever too. And especially now that if they did survive, let's say, like if they did get away with it, how would he explain his daughter coming back too when she was pronounced dead at the scene? It just, a lot of logic just didn't make any sense whatsoever. But I still had a fun time with this movie. I really, really enjoyed this movie from Scream 5 to Scream 6. Back-to-back movies, really fun and enjoyable. And I'm hoping that they do continue with, in terms of like a different settings and different environment, going to like maybe a country outside of the US, or going to Canada, going to maybe even like a Christmassy theme, snowy settings too. So something that I really do hope they are doing. But I'm really fun and enjoyable good time with this movie. Let me know your thoughts, your opinions in the comment section down below. Did you enjoy the reveal? Did you enjoy the motive? Did you enjoy the Ghostface and the movie overall? Let me know your thoughts and your opinions in the comment section down below. But that about wraps it up in terms of like the Scream reviews here. There will be a video in terms of like the Scream ranking movies, Ghostface rankings and Scream movie rankings in terms of a tier list, so keep an eye out on the channel for that. And if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button, hit that like button, hit that notification bell so that you don't miss out on that video and other videos coming out soon here on the channel. But thank you so much for watching, thank you so much for listening. This is YK Reviews.